Tonight's class is always in the memory of Yitzchak Tzvi ben Yosef, and it's in the memory and in the honor of 1,300, 1,400 people that died in Israel. Seems like 200 hostages that are there. What? More. It's not less. It's not less. Okay, fine. I'm not going to argue with you, whatever. I don't think so. It's not. She likes to argue. Whatever. We don't know. Let's just say no one really knows the numbers yet. The government's still figuring out exactly. They're not what? They're not showing us what's going on. So no one knows exactly. Okay. Let's not spend our precious time on that. Hello from South Carolina. Hello from New Jersey. Hello from all over the Southwest Florida. Usher is watching. Okay. Anyway, this man comes to the rabbi. He says, "Rabbi, help me. I'm convinced my wife is trying to poison me." The rabbi says, "What are you talking about? Why would your wife want to poison you?" He says, "Rabbi, I'm telling you, I eat the food. There's something. Help me. I don't know what to do. My wife is trying to poison me." So the rabbi says, "Okay, let me talk to your wife, and I'll figure out how to get to the bottom of it. Let me meet your wife." Anyway, so the rabbi has a meeting with the wife, and then after he meets with the wife, he calls the guy back to his office. So I spoke to your wife, and it's true. Your wife's trying to poison you. She says, "Rabbi, what should I do?" He says, "Take the poison." Okay.
Rabbi, according to what I just found out, 2,700 killed in Israel, Gaza.
No, that's something else. Talking about the Jews. Okay, so why we make all the jokes about marriage? And I mean, there's literally 10,000 marriage jokes, if not more. And there's some kernel of truth, just a little kernel of truth. So my wife, the problem with such a class is, and I make any marriage jokes, people think I'm not happily married, which is obviously not true. Those that are here in the room, you guys know we have a loving marriage. But those watching all over the world might not know. But we talk about marriage, and marriage is dangerous. Marriage is not for the faint of heart. Marriage is probably not recommended for a lot of people. Marriage is a very, very difficult, challenging, stressful enterprise. And not true. Okay. It's beautiful. All due respect, I've been married in many, many years. So in hindsight, it seems beautiful. 10, 15, 15 years. More. I'm here 16 years. 15 years is a long time to forget the stress of marriage. I'm not saying you weren't happily married. I'm just, with all due respect, 15 years is a long time. Ask people that are currently married for 15 years, they may say it's a little bit more difficult. They may just possibly say. Now, second life sentence, exactly. So the question really is what I want to address tonight, and I have to be honest, I struggled a lot how to structure tonight's discussion. I really did, because there's so many angles to Chava. And besides to the sin of the tree, which I wanted to talk about next week, and then the whole idea of the curse of pregnancy and how, the struggle of raising children. There's so many aspects to Chava that you can't do everything in the different messages. So I really had to work to stay focused on one takeaway for all of us from tonight. The objective of this Monday night series is me and the Bible. That's my objective in crafting these discussions, is how do we find ourselves in the person we're talking about, and from their story and their struggle to be able to relate to us. So what I want to really focus on tonight is the struggle of marriage, but not just marriage, the struggle of Adam in his identity and of Chava in her identity, why they have different identities, why God created them with those different identities, and then being able to walk away with clarity in the way we were created and how we are meant to use that aspect of our unique personality. Deal? And that will be, if we can do that successfully, I think it'll be a great takeaway. The role of Chava, but it's not Chava alone. It's Chava's part of the male-female struggle of the universe. And while we're on that topic, I should already warn you now that I may go into dangerous territory and go into dangerous waters. See where Marsha takes me. She's getting excited. Meaning I'm open. Shalom from the Hoosier say. Okay. I'm open to going into explaining the idea of the Jewish perspective on marriage and the roles of male and females and their proper roles if we go there. Well, the roles that God gave male and female in the universe. Jewish people were talking about the perspective of Judaism on the theology of the way man was created. You can close that door if you want, Vivi. Yeah, they're working on wiring there, so it's okay. Just close the door. We're doing security cameras. Okay, so they're doing security cameras. Yes, we passed all of our inspections last week, but now we have to do the those that are following construction. We passed mechanical and electrical and framing, but we're not doing drywall. Starts tomorrow. Today there was electric. There was emergency lights that where the inspect the way that the contractor did is not the way it was on the plans. So I had to change that and the second story. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so my friends, let's start. If we want to understand Chava, the part we need to understand is the way she was created. By the way, just disclaimer for those that are watching, those in the room, Chava and Eve is the same person. It's not two different people, like a bipolar split personality. On some days she feels like an Eve, and some days she's Chava. Chava and Eve is two different languages, but it's the same word, right? So if I switch from Eve and Chava, don't get confused. I'm not talking about the person. Chava is the Hebrew name. Eve is the English name. Okay. So last week we talked about how God created Adam, man. Today we're going to talk about how God created Chava, or more importantly, females, how a woman was created. Now, and then we'll get to what people think and what really happened. So chapter 2 of Genesis, verse 21, remember Adam was lonely. I don't know if we talked about this last week, but in the morning meeting we talked about it. Adam was lonely. He saw how all the animals had a pair, every single beer and lion, and he didn't. He was all alone, and only to God for a companion. Then God put him to sleep, which is just like we talked about. If you remember, Adam praying for rain. There was no rain. There was no nothing had grown. Everything was right below the surface. Even though God had made the flowers and the trees on the third day of creation, and only after there was a man to appreciate the garden and to work the garden and cultivate the garden did God make the garden grow. Yes.
So I was going to say two things. Number one, men should appreciate women just because of that. And I thought they were born as twins.
Oh, okay. You're jumping slightly ahead. Marsha's been around for a few years. That's right. Give me like 2 minutes. Let's read it. Let's read it. Let's see what it says, and let's.
I read it on Shabbos.
Yeah.
Just read it again. I'm like, yeah, that wasn't what I was taught.
So Marsha has been around for a long time, and she has. She's right. She's right. She's right. So, but let's just read it. Stay with me, my friends. Good morning from India. Oh, we got someone watching from India. I spent a month in India. I love India. Okay. Yeah, India's a cool place. It's dirty, but it's cool. Okay, anyway, chapter 2 of Genesis, yes? And the Lord, so Adam is lonely. So the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon man. And he slept. And he took one of his sides and he closed the flesh in its place. So he takes out a tzela in the Hebrew. It says he took one of his tzalosa, one of his tzelas, one of his translated a rib bone. And after he takes out the bone, he does a good job stitching back up the flesh, covering it, a little, cosmetic surgery, make it look nice and clean. Like you can never tell that anyone ever did anything inside. And then the Lord God built the side that he had taken from man into a woman, and he brought her to man. So, before I go further, let me just explain what he's saying here. God didn't want Adam to see how Eve became Eve. It'll be a little disgusting. Like imagine you see an animal being killed and slaughtered and salted, and you lose your appetite maybe. So, in order for him to appreciate Chava as a person of her own, he's asleep. The whole surgery takes place. God puts Adam back together again. And then, all of a sudden, he wakes up. Ta-da! You hit this beautiful woman in front of you. But what's more interesting is the second verse, how God built Chava from this tzela, from this bone that he had made. God builds her. And the way a woman's body is built is literally like a tower, to be wider by the hips and then get narrower, to allow her to carry babies inside her womb. And God designed the female body in a way that's different than the male body to allow it to do things that the male body can't do. Hence the famous joke that after God said man, you know what God said? After God made man, you know what God said? I could do better than that. Let me try again. The ladies like that one. Okay, David is laughing too. Okay, right? Steve's not laughing so much, but he's pondering. He's trying to figure out what can I be perfect. Okay, really. Okay, anyway. So God built her to have a structure that can handle carrying a baby inside her for 9 months and all that. She's built in the tower in the way that men are not built so well. And what happens? So now God brings this beautiful woman Chava in front of Adam. He wakes up, and his dream came true. And here's a wife for him to look at. What does he say? What are the words of Adam when he meets Chava for the first time? Verse 23, and man said, "This time it is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh." By the way, he ready for something crazy? How does he this time it's a bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh? He tried being intimate with each and every single creature that he named before this. So it says in the Torah earlier that God put every creature before man for God to name the animals. So the zebra came before Adam, and he gave the name to the zebra, and he had intimacy with the zebra. It's not this, yeah. He was trying to find his mate. And after he was intimate with the zebra, he said, "This is not for me. This is not my companion." And then the bear came, and he called the bear a dove, which is a name that reflects its. I probably shouldn't have brought this up. You're all looking at me like it's rated R class. I haven't had a rated R class in a while, Marcia. But so basically, God knew that Adam was able to understand the inner spiritual energy that creates an animal. Every animal has its own unique spiritual letter that makes it exist. Just like at a computer, you look at a website, right? And there's you see pictures or whatever you see. Behind that, there's code and all different letters and numbers, and make what you see look the way. So too, a beer has its spiritual combination of Hebrew letters that make it a beer, and a lion in Hebrew is an aryeh. That's its spiritual letter combination to make it the lion that it is. And a fish is a dog because of its spiritual. So Adam sees each creature and is able to see its spiritual energy. And then he says maybe he sees they all have mates, they all have companions. And Adam understands that he's alone. So Adam is trying to find the companion for him. It's a good question. If they already had a companion, obviously they're not his companion.
Right. And how can he do it so many times?
It's all in one. Okay. It was all. By the way, now you're asking another good question. All this happened within the 6 days. In 2 hours. I don't know. He was fast. It might not have been as elaborate. So it's called the Garden of Eden. Very good. The truth is, I'm just postulating that it could be the whole process and building that happens now after man became aware of consciousness and of shame and of temptation. Adam didn't have that. At this point in Adam's life, this is actually a very important point. We went off subject, but this is a very important. We were supposed to talk about Chava, not about Adam. But anyway, Adam had no shame at this point in his life, right? He has no sense of something being forbidden or immoral. He sees he's trying to fulfill his purpose, trying to do his mitzvah of creating, of being a part of producing in the universe. It's an immediate thing. He sees an animal. It's like shaking your hand. Okay, you go to a business meeting, right? And it's not for me. Whatever. It was no like intimacy there. There wasn't a sense of like we think today of a person having intimacy with an animal, something which they know is wrong and abhorrent, and they have to have an excitement for that. They have to be aroused by that, so there must be something that's wrong with them. You understand? That's not how Adam was operating. There was no sense of shame or of sin. He was trying to find his place in the universe. But the point is that God wanted that Adam should request a woman. If God wouldn't have brought Adam to this place where he had seen all the animals, had attempted having a relationship and saw that this is not where his place is, then Adam would never appreciate the woman that he had. Meaning God could have made Adam and Eve as a couple, just like he made the zebra a male and female zebra. But we're going to talk about the comparison to animals in a little bit. Male and female zebras don't have this. We'll talk about it soon. There's no marriage of a male and a female zebra. There's never a separation and they work to come together. That doesn't exist. God wanted, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit because of the conversation, God wanted us to have this need to find the opposite sex, to work to create a relationship, to find your basher, to find your soulmate, to find your spouse. It's hard. Some people are blessed to have it easier. Some work for many years to find the right person for them. Well, yeah, it's a challenge. And that's the way it was designed. So Adam had to first recognize his need for this. Understand?
Yes.
So that's why he had to see all the animals first. Anyway, so now this is what it says in verse 23. Here in verse 23, he says, now, Zos Hapam, this time, now I know that this woman this creature that I've just been introduced to, who's Chava, we don't have her name yet, she is bone of my bones, she is flesh of my flesh. This one shall be called Isha. Why Isha? Because she came from the man. Isha is from the word Ish. So since the woman is not a separate entity, remember this sentence. This is a very important sentence to understand the whole dynamic of marriage. It's in this sentence. Marriage, and we're going to also jump ahead because you should already see it in this verse. Marriage is not two different creatures uniting in one union. Marriage is the part of the man that was taken from the man, becoming once again a part of the man. She was taken from me. Her name, Isha, woman, is because she came from the man. And therefore, verse 24, a man, when he gets married, shall leave his father and his mother and cleave to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. So because even though a child, a boy, comes from his father and mother, when he finds his soulmate, when he finds his marriage, his spouse, he leaves his home, he leaves his mother. Mothers have a hard time with that, but that's what happens. They leave their mother, they leave their home, and now their loyalty is to the woman that's really a part of them. Not the woman that gave birth to them, but the woman that was a part of them. You understanding? And that's why it makes sense and why it's natural for someone to leave their natural environment, their home, their natural upbringing, to go to a new woman who may or may not be a good fit for them, because they're reuniting with the other half of their soul. This is all very, very important. And here we come to understand the beginning of marriage. The idea of the woman being a part of the man. But it's actually much more than just a woman coming from the man's bone. Actually, as Marsha said correctly, and as is well known in many of the commentaries, Rashi says this, it's not, there is an understanding in Torah that the woman was created at this moment, but the mainstream understanding of creation is not that woman was created after Adam was put to sleep. The mainstream understanding of the story of creation is that when God created the man out of the earth, when God created Adam, he actually created a multifaceted creature that had almost like Siamese twins, but it wasn't literally Siamese twins, it was one person, but with two faces, front and back. And the verse says, Achar v'kedem sartani. There's a verse where we describe that God made me, front and back he formed me. And the beginning of creation, Adam was a male and female creature. He was a male and female creature. And what happens at this surgery, when God separates the rib of Adam and now makes a new woman called Eve, all that's really happening is God is taking these two creatures that were existing as one and separating them into two. And if you don't believe me, the Torah says so clearly. How does the Torah say so clearly? If you look a little bit ahead in chapter 4, which is after the story of the Garden of Eden, and they are banished from the garden, when the Torah wants to tell us the future generations and the birth of Cain and Hevel and Cain and Abel, for those who are not familiar with the Hebrew name. So chapter 4 begins, read the beginning of chapter 4. Zeh Sefer told this Adam. This is the narrative of the generations of man. On the day that God created man, in the likeness of God, he created him. Meaning, man is in the image of God. What's the image of God? Is God male or female? Both. God contains male aspects of giving, which we'll talk about soon if we have time, and female aspects. God is not male or female. God has aspects of him that interact with the world in a male relationship, And there's aspects how God interacts with the universe in a female relationship. Zah and Nukva, the Midot and Malchus, the king and queen, Shabbos, Friday night. I mean, there's many different ways where we see these different relationships. So since man is in the image of God, says verse number 2, Zachar unekeva bira'am, which means male and female, he created them. And he blessed them, and he named them. If you read the Hebrew, you see this explicitly. If you read the Hebrew, it says, Vayikra es shmam. What's shmam? Their names, plural, not his name. Their names, Adam. B'yomi baram, on the day they were created. So here the Torah is basically saying, explicitly, that in the beginning of creation, man was created in the image of God. What's the image of God? A multifaceted male-female existence of Zachar Unekeva, of male and female, and this multifaceted creature was called Adam, man. Later on, when man says to God, I don't want to be alone. Oh, you don't want to be alone? Okay, I'll give you a wife. And then God takes this woman that was created simultaneously with the man. He was the man. Oh, sorry, she was the man. And God now separated the she part of the man to make a separate entity called woman. And now we have the marriage of the man and the woman, two halves reuniting into one whole. That is the story of marriage. That's the story of marriage. Which is why a real marriage can only be the two halves of one soul. If a man wants to marry, let's say, another man, for example, you can have a lot of fun, you can have intimacy, you can enjoy yourselves, but that can't be marriage. Because the definition of marriage is the two halves of one soul coming together. So two males can't be two halves of one soul. It's impossible. And a Jew and a non-Jew can't be two halves of one soul. Only a Jew and a Jew could have two halves of one soul. So every single soul that was created at the beginning of creation, because we know every soul comes from Adam. So when God made this Adam in the beginning of creation, in the beginning of chapter 4, every single soul of every one of us exists within that general soul. This is something that's talked about great length in Kabbalah, in Shar HaGagulim, in the Gates of Reincarnation, that we learned many years ago. And from there, it broke down, and you have the 12 tribes, and then the 70 souls that went down to Egypt, and then it goes further and further, till you have 600,000 souls. But every single one of these 600,000 souls is a soul that has a male and a female aspect. And a marriage is the male and female aspects of this one soul coming back together. Hence, we call a marriage a soulmate, a bashert. It's a reuniting, or a reunion is the correct word, a reunion of two parts of a soul. Now, so on this, I want to make a very important observation. When God made the animals, they were created, as we already discussed, as male and female simultaneously. So God made male and female zebras at the same time, right? Male and female zebras. Now, male and female zebras need to become married or to unite with each other. You ever went to a zebra wedding? No, there's no zebra wedding. There's no loyalty. There is no concept of marriage among zebras. Zebras will have intimacy to have children. Now, I'm not an expert in zebras per se, and I just picked that randomly out of my hat, so no one can correct me now and say, well, zebras. But generally speaking, in the animal kingdom, there is no marriage or loyalty of one male or one female. They have intimacy. They give birth. They can't even call it intimacy. They have children, and they move on. And you have one guy having a lot of kids with a lot of, one bull to however many cows or whatever the ratios are that they have. There's not a loyalty of a family unit, right? The lions have a baby. The brides are with the mothers, and that's it. There's no sense of a family unit where a male zebra, I'll just use that as an example, commits its life to the female zebra. Doesn't exist. Because the only purpose of the male and the female of the zebra is to allow for them to have more zebras. They don't have the concept of marriage. When God gave us the gift of marriage, when God gave us this unbelievable blessing of marriage, it's only to the human species, and it's not about having children. Yes, you need to be married to have children, but Adam and Chava were together before they had children. In fact, even when they have children, Torah doesn't even tell us about it until like a few chapters later. Yes, you need to be married to have children, but at its core, marriage is about reuniting two halves of a soul to complete that soul's mission in the universe, to make it whole again. Part of being whole is having children. That's a part of what happens in the marriage. But even when a couple is no longer able to have children, there's still holiness in their marriage. There's still holiness in their intimacy. Well, anyone. Meaning, children is not, although people often think the point of marriage is children. The point of marriage is to complete your soul, which is why you need to make sure you marry someone that completes your soul. Yes. You need someone to complete your soul. Not someone who gets your sexual appetite, aroused, because that may not be good for your soul. Otherwise, I think I'm distracted. But the point is, you have to find someone that is the other half of your soul that completes you. That's how you know that it's a good marriage. Just children, it's good, but that's not, yeah.
In line with your statement, how about many of the patriarchs had multiple wives? How does that work?
Good question.
How does that play out?
Excellent question. So I'll repeat the question. The question was, we find that the patriarchs had multiple wives. I'm going to make your question better.
Okay.
I'm going to make your question much better. All right, patriarchs, whatever, that's what happened. By Jewish law, a man can marry more than one woman.
Right.
I'm making his question much better. Vivi agrees.
Much better.
By Jewish law, it's a very good question, Michael. A man is allowed to have more than one wife. Today, because of Rabbeinu Gershon, we don't do it anymore. But in the way the Torah is designed, it's possible. So how do you explain that? It's a good question. So I think the explanation is as follows. When I said to you before that there's 600,000 souls, how many Jews are there today? How many Jews are alive today? 15 million, 16 million? The Zohar Kabbalah tells us there's only 600,000 Jewish souls. And that's what it says in Sha'ar HaGeula. This is a basic idea. That you have the 70, the 1 soul, the 12 souls, the 70 souls, 600,000 souls. But there's millions and millions of Jews alive. And there's only 600,000 souls. So each one of these 600,000 souls have many, many parts to this soul. It's called the tzutzim, and there's sparks, and there's it's not the point for right now. We're grappled by that. We look through Sha'ar HaGeula. There's the root souls, and there's the branch souls, and then there's so many souls are connected, and the reason why many of us feel an inherent connection to each other, or why we'll have to take care of each other, have a relationship with each other, is because we're all parts of one soul. So the male and female, when we say two parts of one soul, you're thinking of it in like very, very simplistic terms. That there's one soul with one half, two halves coming together. It's one general soul that could contain many, many male sparks and many, many female sparks, and you have to get all the sparks together, but one of these many male sparks could be attaching to one of these many female sparks and making it work.
So you can have more than one for share?
Okay, so, yeah, yes and no. There is a conversation, there's a letter from the Rebbe about this question. What happens if a man marries a second time? Or a woman marries a second time, right? Let's say they got divorced or widowed, God forbid, and there's a second marriage. So which one was the soulmate? And in the Gemara, and I don't remember this offhand. I'm going totally from memory now, and I don't remember exactly how the Rebbe. I know that it's a complex, complicated issue. If I remember correctly, the Gemara says it depends if they were married to the first time, the second time. It's not so simple. I mean, the way the Gemara addresses this question depends on the person, depends on their sin, on their level of righteousness. But the point is that we can go through different stages, and I don't want to say anything on camera I'm not 100% sure about, but that's what I think That's what I think would be the explanation. And a man can have more than one wife, or it could go through different periods, because there's different female sparks of the same soul that my male spark soul is coming from.
But that would be true the other way.
Both ways. Same with women. A woman can marry more. A woman can't marry more than one man in the Torah because there was technically or spiritually. I can think of two reasons why. Spiritually, I didn't get to the Mashpia and Makabel part yet. I didn't even get to the part about how the male gives and the woman nurtures it and develops it, which is much more complicated, much more difficult than what the man does. But even technically, the mitzvah of having children is upon the man. I mean, the mitzvah of creating a future is on the man. And it was the man in most of history that provided for the woman, that gave them security and shelter in the home. Women didn't go out and work. They didn't have jobs the way women today have jobs. So plus many men died young. So men provided the security to the woman. And as we'll soon discuss in a few minutes, I want to go through another point first, how the woman nurtures what the man gives. So the man giving is much easier than nurturing and developing and revealing potential. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but to answer your question. So you can give and kind of move on. To nurture is much more demanding or much more, requires much more, and therefore a woman wouldn't be able to handle that for multiple men. Okay. That answers your question. We're all clear so far? Amazing. Okay. Amazing. I'm glad. Okay, we covered it. Now let's go to the most interesting part. I mean, everything I said so far is interesting. What? Pretty good so far. Okay, so I should probably stop when I'm ahead, no? So, last week we talked about, even though Adam and Chava were created, male and female simultaneously, the beginning of the existence of woman begins at the moment that she is separated from the man. So we come here now to something fascinating about the difference between the way a man was created and the way a woman was created, that will shed tremendous light on the inherent rooted insecurities or triggers that men and women have. Ooh. Ooh. And I'm not giving you some there's like a really good clip out there like about the men that are from Mars, like men that like the waffles and the women that spaghetti. I just saw it recently. I was looking up for something about men. Came up. You know what I'm talking about? Oh my God. Men have brains like a file cabinet. Like a file cabinet, like a waffles, compared to waffles and spaghetti and meatballs. Okay? In a waffle, you make sure you pour like the syrup into the waffle, right? And you pour into each box, and you make sure nothing spills from one box to the next box, and it's exactly perfectly. And that's the story of a man. A man has a brain like a file cabinet, and everything goes into its own little compartment. So there's one compartment called my job, another compartment called my wife, another one called my kids, another one called my car, another one called vacation. And there's a really, really big compartment called nothing. And that's where we like to hang out when we get too stressed out from the other compartments. We go into our nothing compartment and we stay there. And nothing from one compartment ever cross-contaminates with another compartment. That's very dangerous. It will totally destroy us. So when we're dealing with our job, we're in that file cabinet. Please don't throw in any other files. It will make a mess and totally confuse us. When we're dealing with our car, that's what we're dealing with now. I'm dealing with my kids. Now is the kid time. Now is the wife time. Okay, when that ends, and then move on to the next thing. And that's, men are very organized with that. Women are like spaghetti and meatballs. You ever try eating spaghetti and meatballs? They're all intertwined. So a woman starts telling you a story, and next thing you know, she's telling you what happened at work, but she had to mention the coworker and the dog of the coworker that went to the vet, which is on sample, which is where her car was rear-ended 3 weeks ago by this guy that never went to school, didn't have insurance. Oh, and we have to go get the insurance of the house renewed and by the time you feel like, what was the story? Like I'm confused. I was trying to listen to you, but I couldn't understand what you were saying. So I got lost by spaghetti number 6. I got lost. But that's not from the Kabbalah. That's not from the teachings of the Torah. Although it's very, very true. I could have just done that for an hour. Anyway. So man comes from dust. Right? That's what we learned last week. Man was created from the dust of the earth, and then God put a soul into his nostrils. Woman comes from man. So what is a man's greatest insecurity? No. A man's greatest insecurity is, what did you say? Not being alone. Going back to where it came from, going back to dust, becoming nothing. A man's greatest insecurity is deep down, subconsciously, our trauma is that we were dust. We were a nobody, we were nothing, we were just dust of the earth. And therefore, a man feels an inherent need to prove his value, to prove that he's not dust. Look at how big I am, look how strong, like I'm a strong guy. Me and Mashai, I'm trying to Mashai to eat protein. To eat. So we had like thing before supper, which are our muscles, to see if he's getting strong eating his chicken. A man needs to can lift 200 pounds, and I can build a business, and I can make a lot of money, and I can run a triathlon. I was thinking I was going to say it, but that's I can do all these things. I'm so big, I'm so tough, I'm so strong, I'm so manly. A man needs to prove his value in the world, his contribution, his importance, because deep down, man comes from dust. And deep down, man comes from dust, and man is afraid of going back to dust, or going back to nothingness. And we do, but that's a man's fear. So if you strip away the externalities, if you can get past the facade and that the man has his car and his money and everything he has, what's he afraid of? They'll become dust. And therefore, what's the worst thing you can do to a man? Take away deflate his ego. Tell him you're a nothing. Tell a man you're stupid, whatever it is. What does he hear? Not that you're stupid, not that you didn't think of the garbage. You know what you tell him that, how come you didn't do what I asked you? How come you didn't, you know what they're really, really hearing? You're a failure, you're nothing. You're a nobody, you couldn't even do this thing, what are you worth? A man's self-worth is very vulnerable because of our biblical origins, the way we began. But let's see what a woman, women don't have this. A woman does not have a fear of becoming nothing. She's created from man. No, both male and female, the image of God, because God has male and female images. But a woman, she's from the man. And therefore, what's a woman's fear? You know what she's afraid of? Losing her identity, losing her uniqueness, and becoming consumed within the man. A woman is not afraid. She's not insecure that she's not valuable, not worthwhile. A woman knows her worth. What she's afraid of is not being recognized for her own independent value. And therefore, a woman, her greatest fear, or her worst thing you do to a woman is not validate them. Not validate them. Not appreciate them. Not recognize what they're doing. So a man needs to be complimented, so he knows that everyone knows that look how great I am. Look at how strong I am. Look at how rich I am. A woman doesn't need to be told you're rich. A woman needs to be told, I appreciate you. You have value for yourself. I recognize you. They don't need the comments that you're important. They just need to be recognized. They need to be validated. They need to be acknowledged for who they are. Because what they're most afraid of is becoming someone else. Not becoming nothing. They're afraid of becoming man, becoming someone else and losing their identity as an independent person. And that's why when a woman who's not afraid of becoming nothing, she needs appreciation, right? And that's what she needs. And when you don't appreciate her, what does she feel? Abandoned, deserted. So a man, you go to a man, the woman made supper. She didn't tell you that you're the best chef in the world. But she needs you to say, I recognize what you did. The man has to be the best. He has to, otherwise doesn't count. That's, by the way, why the Talmud says that you have to honor your woman even more than your own body. You be very careful with her honor. Because for a woman, she's sensitive to this injustice and this losing her identity and not getting the honor. She needs to feel her own existence. Okay. So now we can understand, this is an introduction to understand the Kabbalistic difference, the way God made man and woman different. A man is meant to be a mashpia. He's meant to be a giver. In Hebrew, mashpia means to give. To give. To prove his contribution to the world. And that's why men are out there. They're dominant, but they're aggressive. They go out to capture. This is the way man was wired by God. We go out to capture, to conquer, to build cities, to build companies, to build buildings. And we're never satisfied with what we've done in the past. We always feel the need to do more because we're always afraid of becoming nothing again. That's the so if I'm doing something. I don't become nothing. Going back to dust, losing my value, losing my importance. A man's afraid of being unimportant, of just being dust. So his honor is very important to a man. His ego is very important to him. And he needs to do, man always needs to do in order to feel valuable. Men can't just sit and do nothing. They can't. They go out with friends. Men go out, they need to go to do something, to drink, to shoot, to jump, to do something. They can't just go and just hang out. Women don't need to do anything. Right? Women could do nothing for hours and be so content. You don't know. Many women. No, we're not doing nothing. Not doing nothing. They're correct. To a man, well, okay. Let me explain to you. This is why men and women can't get along. This is why marriage is dangerous. You two, can you repeat what you said? We're not doing nothing. We're together doing something. What are you doing? Steve will tell you absolutely nothing. Correct? She'll tell you you're doing something. What are you doing? What are you building? What are you creating? What are you designing? Nothing. So again, value by contribution, by action, by building to prove value. If you can't show me what you did, then you didn't do anything. You understand? In my male mind, you two sitting and talking for 6 hours was nothing. And Steve agrees with me. He's not allowed to say it in front of you. But Steve needs to build something. The reason why Steve has to build it, and after he finishes building the garage, he's building a barbecue. And after he builds a barbecue, he's building, I don't know, the driveway and the front way and the bathroom. Because a man needs to feel that they have something to do. The moment you tell a man there's nothing left for you to do, you know what you just said to the man? You are nothing. All you said was, the house is beautiful, leave it alone. I'm content. A woman is content. A woman finds contentment in what she has. That's what it's explaining. Men are never content. It's our nature. We're not content. We don't feel secure in doing, we got together for 6 hours and we didn't do anything. You didn't do anything. If you want me to show you that I did something, I need to prove that I did something. It has to be tangible. It has to be a building. It has to be with bricks, or something manly, something big. And so this is the difference. This is exactly the difference. So a man, what? Yeah, a man looks for things to do. A man creates problems for them to fix. And a man creates, Michelle's agreeing with me. Men create things for us to do just so we have what to do. The moment you tell a man there's nothing left for you to do, the man has officially become a nothing. You tell a woman there's nothing for you to do, just enjoy. That's great, right? The woman doesn't feel the need to do something. What does a woman feel the need to do? To nurture, to develop what she has. What? Oh. Yeah. I got it. Okay. So men are the givers or the builders or the creators in the universe. And women are what's called a makabel. It's the front and the back. When God made us originally, we were front and back. They're the makabel. They're the receiver. This is really a much lengthier conversation. It's a much lengthier conversation. But the point is, a receiver, what's a receiver? It's not just a cup that gets. That's not a taker. A taker is just taking. A receiver, a makabel, is a big difference to be receiving to take. A receiver is absorbing or receiving something, and from that building, developing and nurturing what it got into something much, much more than it was before it received it. So the classic example is a seed in the earth. The man in Kabbalah is compared to the seed, the woman is compared to the receiver of seeds, which is the same thing with the male and female marriage. But the male is a seed. It gives the beginning of a tree, but it gave it. It's the nurturing of the nutrients in the earth that allows for a beautiful tree to flourish and develop for many, many years. The earth will continue to nourish and develop that tree for centuries. It could last. The same thing with the birth of a child. The man is a giver of the seed. He's the one that initiates it. But the woman is not the taker. She's the receiver. She receives potential of life, and she's able to nurture it and develop it and build it into a person. And then to continue to nurture and develop it, even after that person is born, to continue to develop it for many, many, many years. So this is why, to go into a less politically correct discussion, we make the blessings in the morning, in the morning blessings. So what does a man say in the morning blessings? Thank you for not making me a woman. And what does a woman say? Thank you for making me the way you want. You made me according to your desire. A man's not happy with who he is. A man has to prove, I'm not the woman. I'm not something else. I'm more valuable. The man is not content in his place. Hence the man says, I'm going to be something bigger than this. I'm not that. A woman, a receiver, is able to receive whatever she gets and to find the beauty in that, and to be content with that, and to nurture that. That's her contribution in the universe. So a woman is able to say, God, you made me as you want me, and to find contentment in that role. Because that's how she was made by God. And she's content. Most women are content with being able to nurture what they have, and they don't feel the need to prove their value in the world. Now, I will concede that today's feminism taken that away, trying to convince women that to be successful, that to be equal to men, you need to prove your value in the world, and to prove that you can also make money, and you can also be rich, and you can also be strong, and you can also be important and contribute to the world. But that's not the way God designed the woman. That's not the way the Bible tells us about our beginning, about our origin. In our beginning, the man was given this insecurity and this inferiority complex of coming from earth that makes him feel the need to prove himself. And the woman was designed by God to be a nurturer, to be a receiver who can nurture and develop something exactly. That's the blessing of a woman. Yeah.
So I've had discussions with people about that line in the women's prayer. And I always say that it's because men thank God for not being a woman because it's way harder to be a woman.
That's true. It is way harder to be a woman. No doubt about it, much harder. And that's a classic explanation. What I'm saying is a more Hasidic explanation based on this difference between male and female. Of course, what you're saying is on a simple level.
When you're talking to somebody that is at a simple level.
What you just said is much harder to be a woman than a man is the correct answer. In Judaism, there's many correct answers. Yes. So, in conclusion, let's wrap this up. Make sure we have concluded. What are we taking away from this? Taking away two things. Number one is our unique identities as male and female. That's number one. The world is to have male and female energy. And they call it yin, negatives. That's how the world was created. Flow up and down. The world needs a tension of two different forces. Originally made man, he made them with both these male and female in one. I have separated them because God wanted the male to be one aspect, to experience its maleness in its maleness, and for the other part of the soul to experience its female dimension in its female dimension as two. That's the way God made us. That's point number one. But then we have to have a reunion. We have to have a marriage. A marriage, again, is not about sex. It's not about having fun. You can have all that without having marriage. Today, it's pretty acceptable to not have to bother getting married. And if the only reason why you want to get married is just to live with somebody, then there's no reason to get married. Rent an apartment together and your bills, and there's no reason to get married if that's why you're getting married. I'm not even get to the whole love part. Marriage is the reuniting the two parts of the soul that were created as one, and then we're given this opportunity to experience their duality, but as individuals, you're not complete. Any male that doesn't have a female aspect to him is missing a half identity. And any female without a male is missing half of her identity. The marriage is the reunion that brings them back together, that makes them back into one whole. A soulmate that talks to your soul, that makes you feel. When one of the signs that when you're dating, it's right for each other, when the silence is comfortable. Silence is comfortable. It's not awkward silence. It's comfortable. Like I just sitting in your presence, I feel comfortable just being in your presence. Not because of what you say to me or how you look at me or how any of those things. The silence is comfortable. Your presence complements my half of my soul and vice versa. And that's the Jewish perspective on marriage, bringing together two halves of a soul, which is why they have to be two halves of one soul, not two males, it has to be two halves of one soul. And that creates the ability for the ultimate perfection. And the last thing I want to say, so why did God separate them? I said, why did God make them as one then? If God wanted us to unite the male and female, why didn't God just make us male and female? If God would have, you understand the question? If God wants male and female to unite, it's okay. Just like he made a male zebra and a female zebra. If God would make male and female humans separate, marriage would never work. It would be too impossible. Impossible. The inherent needs of males and females are too different. Only because we once coexisted in one body is it possible for us to once again coexist in a marriage, which is really living together. Says every chuppah. What's the power of a chuppah? People walked into this chuppah and they won. It's a crazy thing. 1 + 1 = 1. It's Jewish math. 1 and 1, a male and a female, walk into the chuppah. When they walk out, they're not two people anymore. They walk out as one new identity of a married couple. Not a male and female living in the same house. A couple. A union, a reunion, I should say. So the only way that that's possible, that we can reunite with our other half and to live happily ever after, is because once upon a time, many years ago, God made halves of one soul. God made us in one body. And afterwards, when God separated these two into two separate halves, we have that need, like Adam, to find Chava. We have to search to find the other half, and then to be reunited once again in home. Okay? That's the story of me in the story of Adam and Chava in their creation. Next week, we'll talk about the snake and the Garden of Eden.